Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Continent on African Voices Radio. I'm Baillor Jalloh. Today, we delve into a topic generating significant debate and concern in Zimbabwe and across the continent. The proposed constitutional changes in Zimbabwe could reshape the nation's political landscape, and we have a compelling discussion lined up for you. Joining us is Simba Chikanza, an investigative news researcher for the Al Jazeera Cult Mafia documentary, and the founder of Zimbabwe News Network. He will provide insights into these amendments and their potential impact. We will explore arguments from both sides, implications for democracy, and the broader regional context. Good afternoon, Simba, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Baillor. Looking forward to our discussion today.
And joining us from the other side as well is my colleague, Tchiyiwe Chihana. Good afternoon, Tchiyiwe, from where you are.
Hi, Baillor. Hi, Simba. Lovely to be with you guys.
Thank you very much, both of you. So, Simba, just give us an overview of the proposed constitutional changes in Zimbabwe and what they entail for the country's political landscape.
Well, Baillor, we're seeing a phenomenal development in Zimbabwe. What is going to happen, likely to happen, and most likely set to happen in the coming few weeks is the changing of the constitution to create what is most certain to become a life presidency. This is the shifting or the twisting of the constitution to give the current president powers to extend his term from 2028 right up to 2030, cancel elections that were due in 2028, and at the same time extend the life of parliament. What this bill also does, it gives judges a framework that the president can arm twist whichever way he wills in terms of the selection process. It also turns the chieftainships of the country. These are the traditional leadership of the country who are in, and by the Constitution of Zimbabwe, judicial officers, turns them into political operators. In fact, it turns them, to be precise, into politicians. This is also a twisting of the constitution that strips the Zimbabwean National Army so that they do not repeat what they did to the former president, the late President Robert Mugabe, in 2017. I shall explain further why these changes, from what I found out, are being done.
Okay.
Simba, on the you've just said this means potentially a life presidency. Is there a particular allusion to it, or is it insinuated based on the amendments that are being made, or is there something specific that speaks to that potential of the life presidency? I thought it was just an extension.
Well, if we look at the age, the president's age at present, he has crossed the 80 threshold. He's in his 80s. And if we were to judge, we're in 2026. Right. And in 2030, the president will be nearing 90. And your guess is as good as mine. I mean, that then amounts to someone who is quite certain going to die in office. And that is where I pick the term life presidency there. But also, quickly, it is the aspect of the possibility of some change of leadership happening in the future. The only feasible method of changing a president in this country since 1980 has been that of force. Using use of force. It's never been elections, but this time it's actually going to be worse because the army is going to be stripped of the power. This is the last institution that had some feasible or capable ability of changing a president under the framework that the United Kingdom, the mess that Great Britain left their colony in 1980. And so we can only project to that picture, that horror of a life presidency, someone who is going to be having unhinged power at his disposal because the army is no longer there. And we're also to look at, there is this phenomenon that is talked about many times, the suspicious deaths of generals, military generals who assisted this current president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, into power. How many generals have died? I mean, I'm not going to try and speculate.
But you have speculated, you said suspicious
yes,
death.
I'm not going to, absolutely. I'm not going to do that. But I am going to, my apologies, I'm just going to.
Right, Baillor. So I'm listening to Simba. I'm compelled to understand better as well what the rest of us do not see from outside. So when it comes to the judiciary, I think that was a key point that Simba raised about the judiciary being made into politicians per se. I wondered if we could explore that a little bit more.
Oh, absolutely. So we're talking here, the judiciary. These are the judges from magistrate level all the way up to the Chief Justice. Now, these are people who the president can now handpick, and he can appoint at will at any time for any, and this is his own making. These are the powers that he's being given constitutionally. I mean, it was possible before, but this time it's going to be an institutional framework that is being put in place. And however, there is a next level here. The country's traditional leadership. We'll know that before Great Britain came and took over the territory that later on became Rhodesia, Zimbabwe was under a king or chieftainship framework. When the colonial powers came and then created the country that became what was named, these were elevated to the position of near judicial, and that's how that's the role that they continue to occupy after independence. So in this new constitution, they are chiefs traditionally, but they are also magistrates at a very, very high senior level below the magistrates, the local magistrates court system. And so these chiefs are now being turned into politicians. They're now being given the freedom to become political operators constitutionally. And so you're looking at a situation here where the entire judicial system, from the village level all the way up to the Chief Justice, are going to be political operators.
Is that partisan politics you're talking about? So with an affiliation to the political party of the day?
It's a situation where the officer is they are themselves a politician, constitutionally.
Okay.
And so they no longer become an independent arm of government, serving justice. No. They are now political operators. So that is one horror there that points to us that, look, then the president is the one who's going to be having all this power. There's no longer going to be a judiciary.
But Simba, if I may,
more active judiciary in this sense.
What could you say to have led to this, and what is Mnangagwa doing differently to that of President or late President Mugabe? You mentioned earlier that looking at things from the previous late President Mugabe, he had so many powers, but it looks like this is going to be far worse than what you've had in Zimbabwe before. What will you say have triggered this?
Let's look at the historics here. Emmerson Mnangagwa did not obtain this power, this brutal power today. This brutal power was given Mnangagwa historically, if we were to look back in the 1970s.
Right.
In 1972, when Great Britain supported the imposition and the coup that Idi Amin in Uganda executed. Emmerson Mnangagwa was released. And this is an aspect that of history that you won't get in history books. But I want to say from my notes that I have from Emmerson Mnangagwa's own mentor, who was a former British intelligence operative for India and then later on Rhodesia. Mnangagwa was released in 1972 and said to have been deported to Zambia. In that year, Mnangagwa then started inventing his career as a student at law and the like and the like. And those who study well the events of those days, they point to an operator who was a rogue, a prisoner, an ex-prisoner, who was at the level of Idi Amin, who was planted by the Rhodesia Special Branch in order to destroy everything that the Black people fought for.
What's the level of Idi Amin in this context? I mean, Idi Amin was leader of Uganda, was president. So what do you mean when you say level of Idi Amin?
So I'm talking about the character here, the character, the nature of leadership. We're talking about a rogue. There are these discussions that at present we have seen, for instance, in the US Senate, where military generals have been summoned to the Senate and they're being quizzed why it is that every person that the US Army has supported to take over African countries has turned out to become a rogue. Now, that is the kind of picture that I'm pointing to here, where certain individuals, by the way, I don't think that it was the Rhodesia government itself, or in the case, the British government as a whole. No, but these were units, like individuals inside the intelligence of that day that decided to plant operatives who would be there to just disrupt everything and just destroy. And so the last 11 years of Dan Stannard's life, he had many interviews and he would speak about Emmerson Mnangagwa many times. And Mnangagwa has even said so recently that they had a mentor, a recruit and recruiter relationship, him and Dan Stannard. But during that time, before Dan Stannard died, he's just died in the last, I think it should be 2 years ago. So Dan Stannard would make statements that suggested regret for assisting Emmerson Mnangagwa.
African Voices Radio, amplifying our stories, connecting our communities.
Okay.
Training him and wanted the people to know.
And it's his diary that you're saying you've got notes from. It's Dan's diary.
Absolutely. Very, very direct notes. I would get emails, phone calls from Dan Stannard. He was a man who had and carried a lot of history and was willing to share it. It's as if, I will put it in Shona, we planted this demon, this little demon. We created this demon. We gave it so much power, hoping that the demon would keep the treasure. But then the demon eventually ran off with the keys.
And this is you framing where Mnangagwa is coming from with these constitutional amendments.
Absolutely. We're looking at someone who was given so much power. Not today. A lot of people don't get it.
72, you say.
1972. And if you look at 2017, there was a British ambassador called Catriona Liang. She was a female ambassador for Zimbabwe. She would pop out in a scarf I remember one time meeting her, and I said to her, "Oh, you're wearing that satanic scarf," and that's what I called it. And she supported Emmerson Mnangagwa. A lot of people didn't get it, couldn't understand why it is that there seemed to be such affinity between former colonial power with this man who led the brutal suppression and the killing of tens of thousands of Zimbabweans, and has a reputation for allegedly destroying not just human lives, but we're talking economy and so many things, institutions, and so that reputation, where did it come from? That power, that culture, where did it come from? And some people have used poetically the name, okay, and they've gone down to the name. There's a video of Mnangagwa's sister, Diana, who is half Zambian, half Zimbabwean, one time, and she is speaking in a documentary and describing their upbringing when Emmerson, whose real name is Dambudzo, and Dambudzo means trouble, and she describes, trouble, chaos. This is a name that his parents, his mother and father, gave him. And he himself later on says that it is him who later on changed that name, so he could be called Emmerson. And someone would ask, why? There seems to be a background here to someone who has had what I could call, from my background of research, a troubled upbringing. Someone who was perhaps troubled himself, as he was described.
You've just jumped a bit there. Can I just pause you for a bit?
Sure. Thank you.
Catriona relationship, 2017. You specifically say 2017. What I was wondering, is this pre-coup, post-coup? What do you mean?
It was pre, during, and post.
Okay.
There was the British ambassador was too close for comfort with Emmerson Mnangagwa, and she would be criticized eventually by the British Africa minister, who's since written a whole book about it, to disclose what he found on Emmerson Mnangagwa, how much the British establishment regrets supporting such a man who's now ran off with the keys, as it were, and I keep referring to that term, ran off with the keys. So this is the background. I'm hoping that people get this, because a lot of people can't see how did it come to be? If anyone wants to know Emmerson Mnangagwa, they need to know him. Number one, from his background, his upbringing, who he is. Firstly, how he himself described himself. What does he say? He says he was trained to kill and destroy. That's what he says with his own mouth.
All right.
And so that should say a lot before you start to study, before you begin studying what he has done. Then you want to have listened to what he says, how he calls himself, how he introduces himself.
Okay. And so for those that are just joining in and haven't been with us from the start, we're speaking to Simba Chikanza, who is an investigative journalist and editor for his work on the Al Jazeera Gold BAFTA documentary, as well as founder of ZIMI. So we're addressing the conversation around the proposed constitutional changes in Zimbabwe, and Simba is giving us context to who Mnangagwa is as a person. Yeah, continue, Simba. I just thought would bring people up.
So there is something, another phenomenon that you might want to also peep into. When we were working on the Gold Mafia documentary, when the footage eventually came out, I don't know if people saw that the people who were found to be benefiting from the wealth, from the gold. They were predominantly foreigners, or they were white Zimbabwean with a very, very not so ethical background, criminal background, a very, very strong criminal background. But there were hardly any blacks in there, black Zimbabwean nationals. And that really contrasts the reputation that Mnangagwa has built himself as a Pan-Africanist. And it suggests, and it might point to what I was talking about earlier on, that that could stitch up the full string from pre-1972, who Mnangagwa is before 1972. Was he a politician, or he was something else?
So,
that was chosen the same way that Idi Amin was chosen by the intelligence operatives of that time to get in there and destroy everything that the Black liberation fighters have fought for.
Why did he wait, though, for Mugabe to go in before? If that was his role, why did he wait?
exactly, and why until 2017?
Okay, so Mugabe was also part of the project, although at a lower level. Mugabe was another half fake. He was part of the system. We'll notice here Mugabe only started leading the liberation fighters after the death of Herbert Chitepo. Chitepo had been killed in a bomb in March 1975, and Nabaningi Stole, who had also been removed. And then eventually Joshua Nkomo, his party was ambushed, and his people were ambushed. Over nearly 30,000 people are estimated were killed. So that is the rise of these two characters. They're not many. The people who have destroyed this country, it's not a lot of people. It is in fact one person. Mugabe and Emmerson Mnangagwa are one and the same, because from 1977, Emmerson Mnangagwa was Mugabe's enforcer, as a Johnny-come-late, someone who just suddenly popped out from Zambia, claiming that he was a politician. All of a sudden, he is now the president's personal assistant. And then from nowhere, Emmerson Mnangagwa is now controlling the security apparatus of the liberation movement. So he didn't wait. He was already there. He was in there from 1977.
Right.
Those who couldn't see it just didn't see it. But it was.
So what you are alleging
a foregone
then?
conclusion.
Yeah, what you are alleging is, we've asked you about the constitution or the current constitutional amendments, but what you're alleging is, firstly, you've said this is to set up Mnangagwa for a lifetime presidency, and also looking at the few years perhaps he has remaining because of his advancing age. But also you're saying prior to this, there's been a running thread which you think has been leading up to this moment based on the history, and you suspect, or you allege rather, that he was a plant by either the former British government in the colonial times or some actors that would have worked with Idi Amin as well. Just to get very clear with that, Simba.
Absolutely. Half a century. Mnangagwa has had half a century, 50 years to prepare for this.
To what end, though? To what end?
It's to take over power and destroy a black man's country. He was never meant to build anything. He doesn't have capacity. His own parents called him trouble, and he
was born and named. Come on, it's not like they called him trouble after he had been leaving for a while.
The sister describes
exactly, and I'm thinking as well, how could he alone be so influential in a country of over 12 million population?
How could
Mnangagwa alone, as you are alleging, be in trouble, and also, being brought by the system? Why is he? How is he able to control the whole system, to make sure the whole military, intelligence, and other apparatus in the government, be under his arms without nobody shaking?
It's one of the easiest things that I've learned. One thing that I've learned is that one of the easiest things is to take over a country. This is do you know, it's not that complicated. I mean, we have I'll just use, if with your permission, an example of a very, very big country that I won't mention by name. People would know it, that has been taken over by a certain person, okay, whose background is extremely checkered. Yeah, it's not complicated to take over a country, is it? I mean, you know what? At one time, 2 years ago, I managed to. I always laugh with the Zambians, and I tell them, I almost took over your country using an iPhone 15, a fake iPhone 15.
Was that a fake phone? Come on, I don't.
As a foreigner, just speaking over a WhatsApp call, I managed one time to almost take over your country. I was almost given the keys by your foreign affairs minister level of a cabinet. Of course, he's former, but he is very, very senior. Someone is running for presidency. I mean, it doesn't seem to be.
But you've got to have a certain type of backing. Simba, if we go back, we are making assumptions about who you're referring to about the big country. But given those circumstances, if those are you have to have certain conditions that are being met. And part of that is having a certain backing. But what you're trying to say is that Mnangagwa does not need any backing. He actually owns that. So it's not an easy takeover like you're suggesting in that case.
No, he has built this thing. Mnangagwa was, of course, he had a lot of backing. Did I lose you? Okay.
No, we haven't.
Mnangagwa had a lot of backing. My video might go off briefly, but I'll continue speaking.
Okay.
Mnangagwa had institutional handover. That's one thing that a lot of people, even I keep telling a lot of the liberation fighters who are trying to remove him. And I tell them, look, you need to understand, this man the country was handed over into his hands. So he's got institutional handover. 1972. How old were you in 1972?
I wasn't born.
Yeah, and so that just tells you here, 50 years, institutional. And
but if you want to put it that way, Simba, then you're talking about so many more leaders across the world that would have been alive at a certain point and become leaders later on. But I think what you want to do is to hold on to this theory of how he would have risen and how he was mentored or whatever it is, shaped into becoming this person that he is today, which is the person who is as you allege, is the person who's aiming to be life president. But I'm not sure whether there's an agenda you're thinking of beyond his presidency. What is the end goal? I'm not sure whether you can hear us, but your screen has frozen.
And also, one other thing I've noticed as well is that ZANU-PF, on the other hand, is listening to what Simba is saying there. ZANU-PF, on the other hand, is saying this proposed constitutional changes will be less controversial and it will be less costly. And looking at Zimbabwe right now, the economy is at a very, I would say, difficult period right now. They are facing a very difficult challenges in terms of their economy. If they are able to kind of conduct an election that is less costly, I just wanted to know how he responds to that, looking at.
I think we have Simba back.
I think we've lost him for a minute there.
We lost him. Okay. So, but Baillor, what are the constitutional amendments that we're addressing here? Like specific, because we've gone more to the foundations, or at least alleged foundations of who the personality is that's at the helm at the moment. But constitutional amendments are about the country. They are not about the individual. Well, on paper. Yeah. So what are we talking about here?
Well, basically here, according to what they are saying, the proportional changes are that Mnangagwa's term of office was meant to be ending in 2028. But now, if approved with these constitutional changes, he will be able to stay in power until 2030,
Okay.
And also,
and that would be applicable to any president that comes in after that?
Yes. I think Simba is trying to come in again.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So after 2028?
Yeah. So after 2028, that means he will have the keys to stay in power, until 2030. And also after that,
so for another 2 years after.
For another 2 years extra,
Okay.
And after, when he wins another election again, he will be in office for 7 years, which I wanted to know what Simba could say on that, because listening to what Simba is saying, but we've seen recently so many African countries have done similar changes from 5 years to 7 years, So I don't think what Mnangagwa is doing is only something that, only relates to Zimbabwe, or that only relates to
No, but
Mnangagwa.
what's the basis? What's the basis of these changes in other countries? We're not going to start saying this country. I mean, like, what has been the basis of other countries, and does that make it right? Has it been right or wrong? And what's the reasoning behind the
Well,
extension?
like Simba said there, we just have to say it as it is. It's the fact that many of them wants to stay in power for life.
Okay.
Most of them have been in power for over 15, 20 years, and some of those that are just coming in, the young ones in West Africa as well. For example, in Guinea,
Yeah, we've seen
there has
that,
been a
yeah.
constitutional changes recently, whereas, the constitution has changed from a 5-year term limit to 7 years. And many are alleging as well that is for the president to have, to be able to stay in power for longer,
African Voices Radio, amplifying our stories, connecting our communities.
Simba, do we have you?
I mean, is it possible for someone who has been convicted of a serious crime at the level of robbery or murder, for them, when they become, or should they become a politician, for them to relinquish power? Someone who could do something of that nature. Mnangagwa has a conviction from a very, very serious one that involves violence from the 1960s.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm just asking, is it possible? And if you look at let's see, right now he's president.
It shouldn't be
so,
possible. I think,
yeah.
is it
So if
possible?
you,
It's
on paper
happened.
it's not,
yeah,
but
It-
practically
if you
in
look at,
Africa
yeah,
it's
if you look
possible.
at
It shouldn't be.
there's a gentleman, a very, very large body-wise gentleman who flies around these days, is known for appearing in pictures with presidents, having been sent by Mnangagwa across. We see him in Tanzania, we see him in Kenya, and Malawi, so many African countries. His name is Wikno Chivayo,
Okay.
traveling around with stashes of money, someone who is a convicted fraudster. I mean, someone who actually stayed in prison, Zimbabwe prison, okay?
Right.
Had a conviction
Had been
that
convicted.
stayed for over 3 years in a maximum prison. That person is the president's own emissary, chief emissary, flying around the continent and with stashes of money, splashing money on social media and boasting about it. And yeah, so when you look at such a scenario, also further, the other people here, like I mentioned in the Gold Mafia documentary, who are convicted, convicted fraudsters, and these are people who are close to the president. How is it that such a person could be regarded as a politician? How could Mnangagwa be regarded as someone who is
Is he
genuinely in
traveling as
politics?
Mnangagwa? When you talk about his travels and his money, are you speaking specifically in the context of him representing the president in those meetings, or are you speaking about his
Or
travel?
representing
It's not
Zimbabwe.
known. It is not known
Okay.
the nature. But what we know is those are very high profile meetings.
But
If
you're
you're going to
raising
be, if you're going to be
concerns
in
because
picture,
of proximity. You're raising
absolutely.
concern
If you're
on
going to
his
be in a
call.
cozy picture, wearing pajamas with Ruto, William Ruto. After that, you are with Suluhu of Tanzania. You are with the Malawi president. Such level of access then
Yeah.
it shows you these are not just random private type of visits. These are very high profile. And then soon after that, we then see him cozying up with Mnangagwa, right? Wearing pajamas, shorts with Mnangagwa in a living room. And this is a convicted fraudster, someone who was in prison for 3 years, could be maximum prison. And doesn't that give a picture of the type of president who is there today? People could try and philosophize the term extension and try to project and say, oh, so what's going to happen? Are elections going to happen? And then what happens after that?
I think
But the
Simba,
point is,
I think at the moment the current environment would raise concerns as we're seeing in the Epstein files and who had proximity. I think very similarly in other places there would be concerns about that. But let's go back to the constitutional amendments because we really do want to hear from you specifically
absolutely.
on those ones. Yeah.
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 And I also wanted to hear what's the take on the opposition so far, if there is any.
Okay, quickly, let me tell you that the opposition in Zimbabwe has had the greatest challenge, I think, comparable to any other African country. The country is facing an ambush. I'm sorry, the opposition continues to face a serious attack on its existence. However, I can tell you that despite what is happening, the opposition exists informally. It still continues to
Yeah.
exist, and it's still as vibrant. The
Mhm.
only I mean, the challenge being there's no politics. I know a lot of
Right.
people have said, "Oh, there's no opposition." Opposition to what? In what? The point is that the country does not have a political system. It's got a brutal criminality. So in such, there's no way you can ever have politics. You can never have anything that is political happening. Yeah.
So
What
But
where
don't
are
you
the
think,
places where
Simba?
they're speaking from at the moment in relation to the constitution amendments? I hear you when you say there's an underground, not an underground, but an almost, there's a movement that's still happening on the opposition. So where are they speaking from? How are they addressing this current proposition to the constitutional amendment? And why is it that when we read externally, we're hearing that there's opposition to it, but we're not understanding where that is coming from and why is that I hear you again when you say the visibility is probably impacted by brutality, alleged brutality. But where is it happening and who are the actors? Do you have confidence in green shoots from them?
No, the people who were there before 7 years ago were MPs. So many of them were bribed. They ended up joining. They were, some of them were beaten down and forced to join Mnangagwa as pseudo opposition. And this is the framework under which, or the circumstances under which Nelson Chamisa ended up resigning, like literally stepping away from his own political party because it had become stained. That period had one or two journalists who betrayed also the opposition, who would be giving phone numbers of safe houses to the army and to Mnangagwa and his security apparatus. And so activists were hunted down. People were either bribed or forced out of political
Yes.
participation, and so the opposition was destroyed. However, there
Yeah.
is still opposition, and I want to have to stress that
Yeah.
Zimbabwe does have a very strong civil society, despite
Mhm.
despite and in spite
Mhm.
of the ambush.
So
And
would an outlet like yours, Simba, provide space for that opposition to manifest itself confidently then, like Zimai? Is that a space where, so I'm looking for the places where these conversations can take place safely, if you will.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, this is what we do. That is, and that is what the network was formed for. It is to help the oppressed. That's what we've been doing over the last 17 years. Yeah, trying our best to strengthen the civil society and give them a voice. It's not been easy, but it has produced results here and there. I mean, I can tell you definitely, even in the region, it were Zimbabweans who contributed to the transition of politics from the Edgar Lungu regime to the current regime that is at present. Malawi also, there were Zimbabweans. Botswana, there were Zimbabweans. So I'm just talking of the same civil society
Yeah.
that may have not had success in its own country as yet,
Yeah.
but
But they've been
it's
there.
still playing an extremely pivotal role in the region, in freeing up, helping to free up, and so the news network exists for that purpose, is to give that voice, or perhaps that hope where there's just absolutely no hope, as
So
it
if I'm
were.
hearing you correctly, with the supposed paralysis of the opposition in terms of overt platforms, are you suggesting there's no recourse to actually curtailing any disgruntlements around these proposed amendments, and that it's a given, it's going to happen regardless, damned if you do, damned if you don't?
Do you know, I'm going to drop something here with your
Yeah.
permission that might get uncomfortable to some people, but I'm just going to say it, right?
Yeah.
And I'll lower my voice a little bit.
Don't lower your voice, go on.
As long as
We
it's
want
not
to
that
hear you.
controversial.
Right. Institutionally, there seems to be no hope at all. But I want to say that there's still a chance. There's still a chance. And that chance lies with the most insignificant citizen.
Okay.
Yeah, the people that we would never write in our news articles, that we would never notice because they don't have a name, they don't have money, they don't have connections. I see these individuals, not many, not a group, but one or two people,
So Simba,
being
if there
the
is,
catalyst to something happening, something amazing happening. I just can't tell what it is, but I could give you some examples of what has already happened in the last 5, 6 years. You know, just as has been for thousands of years, the catalysts of change have been those who are unknown, those who are the poorest, the weakest. They've always turned out the most powerful.
And
They've
you're
always
seeing
turned
that
out.
you're seeing
I
intervention
still see
coming.
hope. I personally see
Yeah.
hope in the midst of all the chaos. And I don't think that the hope is going to come in a conventional way. I don't think it's going to come in a way that people talk about politics as in politics. Humanity has a way of
I mean,
always finding a way out.
right.
okay.
I mean, the people are the people, right? So the people are the people. The people are the ones who bring in people into power as well. They come from the
Absolutely.
banners.
You know, the same way that Mnangagwa, who was an unknown, he was unknown. What was he? What was he? 1972. What was he? Do you know? Even in 1977, what was he? You know, they talk about him even right now in their press conferences, these war veterans. They say, look, this fella he was just a student. But how come he's controlling us? Yeah, the most insignificant people from time immemorial, for thousands of years, they're the ones who always have the last laugh. Always.
Okay. So Simba, there is a lot to unpack here from what you've said, but in terms of what you've just highlighted about the people, the poor people, I'm just wondering, in terms of the diasporans, you mentioned that there is little hope, and also that hope lies by people trying a lot, very hard. That is like the poor people. But there are many Zimbabweans out of Zimbabweans, people like yourself, there is a huge amount of diasporans in the UK and other parts of the world. I'm just wondering, what's your role into this? What you could do to make a difference? And also, if these changes are to happen, what could this mean for Zimbabwe and the region in general, the SADC region?
Yeah, well, the diaspora have always been key to things happening. I mean, if you look at Israel right now, it's a small country, but the reason why it's got so much power is because of its diaspora population who are lobbyists, who do the lobbying in America, lobbying in Britain, and the like and the like. And so the Zimbabweans in the diaspora could, and I think they're going to have a key staging role in whatever positives that have to be obtained in this. And I see so many of them doing their best quietly. Some are loud, but diaspora are definitely going to be key in this initiative of
And
changing.
are people really involved into politics?
Oh yes, they are, but they don't just take it as politics. Most of them they don't pursue their drive for democratic change merely politically. There are different ways that they're doing it. Some are pursuing a business.
Okay.
Pushing avenues such as that. Some are, So it's multifaceted, and I've seen people don't never run out of ideas. That's one thing that I've noticed, and it is encouraging, despite the fact that this country is one of the worst dictatorships, only comparable to Russia and Belarus.
As a Zimbabwean citizen, Simba, and also just generally, I like that you've touched on Israel, you've touched on other countries as well through these conversations. But when government starts to frame these changes like constitutional amendments as efficiency or cost saving, and I think Baillor was also trying to bring that conversation in, how should that be interpreted politically, though?
Okay, I need you to just slightly rephrase that so that my mind can open up.
All right, so I'm saying like when most of the reasons that are forwarded when it comes to constitutional amendments such as these ones, they're always under the auspices of this is about efficiency, cost saving. It's always around those things. But how should that really be interpreted politically?
Okay, I'm hoping that I can answer you on that. And I think maybe Baillor can give a slide to that. Baillor, do you want to just add a little bit to that question?
Well, yeah, basically, if we look at, we're talking about Zimbabwe here. One of the arguments about these constitutional changes or the proposed constitutional changes in Zimbabwe, the ZANU-PF supporters are arguing that the new system will be less costly and it will be less controversial. But politically, is that the case? I think that's what Tchiyiwe is trying to say here.
Thank you, Baillor.
Absolutely.
Totally.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the
so
question.
no. Well, obviously that is an excuse that they have used there. That look, this is going to be convenient, and there's more to it. You've even said that elections are chaotic, and they strain resources, and elections are violent, and just mere excuses that they're just throwing in the way, try and justify twisting the constitution.
Can I just ask you this on a
but the
personal
thing is,
level? As an investigative journalist
Sure.
working abroad, I was reading at looking at your website and also some of the comments that you get on social media, many see you as an opposition supporter or as an opposition sympathizer. What's your response to that?
Well, that is a tag that they always give. But you see, when we give alternative voices,
The reason why I
when
thought I should ask that question is
create
because
democratic
since we started,
space.
are you with me?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, the reason why I thought I should ask that question is because since the show started, you've kind of like highlighted the background of Mnangagwa, how he rose into power, and the fact that this is kind of like for you, you believe it is going to be like a lifetime presidency. So I'm just wondering, maybe our listeners out there, for people who don't know you that much, and if they read comments like online that think you are you're always from the opposition side. So
Yes, I'm
I
always a
just thought you
critic.
should respond to that so that people could see or hear your side of the story.
I see. Yeah, I think you see, opinions do matter when people pour out, and I always accept them. What we're dealing with at present, however, is a topic that is heavily one-sided itself. It's to do with one person. It's more to do with one person, something, an event, an incident that is unrolling before our eyes, and the analysis could easily be interpreted as partisan or as pro opposition. And I do take that feedback. But I want to say that there is little to talk about at present, to admire, let's be frank, about. Because you're dealing with institutions here. Any country, the strength of a country, it's institutions, and it's its constitution. And what Mnangagwa is doing, or is about to get right now, is not just changing a constitution. He is touching the institutions. And so, what is positive about what is it that I could pick, that I could say he's doing right, when he spent the last 50 years practically and demonstrably running down what was once the world's fastest growing crop economy, according to the stats of 1976, the UN World Book stats. This was a big country. This was a country that was an Africa's economic giant. And what is it that I could pick on him, that I could say? And also, there's an aspect of rule of law.
Okay.
How could I get political? How could I swift to the other side when a president is dining with convicted criminals? Yeah, is seen there with some of the most notorious convicted fraudsters on earth, and cozying up with them and allowing them to splash money. We're talking stashes of money here, creating a culture where people start to idolize individuals, and you see the gain of money without working for it. What is it that I could say is positive
Well,
about such a leader? And so I'm hoping that I've explained there what it is. And also, lastly, if someone was to say that I'm being political, where's the politics anyway? There's no politics in Zimbabwe. It's the
okay.
total breakdown of the rule of law. Complete and
Well, Simba,
utter.
we've got less than 5 minutes
I see.
before we
Thank
wrap
you.
up. I just
Are we
thought,
able to get your video back on though before we
Oh
finish?
yes. Sure.
yeah,
I'm gonna. Yeah. Let's continue. Thank you.
yeah. Just a final one from me before we wrap up.
Yes.
There has been few public hearings taking place with regards to these proposed changes happening in Zimbabwe. We've heard from the ZANU-PF and also from people who are opposed to the proposed changes. Recently, I watched a video. I'm wondering if it is an authentic video. And as someone from Zimbabwe, as a journalist, I'm guessing you will have more insight into this. A human rights lawyer, a white human rights lawyer, was kind of like attacked in the hall. He alleged that his phone was stolen and his glasses as well were stolen. And I looked at that on social media, on X to be specific. I saw many people commenting on it. I saw videos from two angles, but as a video editor myself, I know there are certain things that are possible. I'm just wanting for you to shed light on that. If the allegations of opposition or people who are against the constitutions, they have been attacked by ZANU-PF, or whether, as
Absolutely.
ZANU-PF has said as
This
well,
is
it's
Jack
people fighting
Coltart.
themselves.
Absolutely. Jack Coltart is someone who has been betrayed by the Mnangagwa regime. He's a lawyer who stood to represent Mnangagwa's lieutenants, many of them when they were being hounded by the former president in 2017. He was there, was campaigning, even campaigning as an activist. Just for the love of not just the profession, but also his passion to just see every person express themselves.
And I've even
That is
seen
who Jack
videos where
Coltart
he's trying to
was.
defend himself as a Zimbabwean, trying to like sing in Zimbabwean languages and also trying to
Absolutely.
dance,
Jack Coltart
even
is a Zimbabwean by heart, passionate. He just loves people. I've seen him represent some of the weakest members of the community, and that's just what he is. And that incident, that it really did happen, and I watched it from afar. But it really did happen. His cell phone was snatched. It was it was violent, and they just did it in order to frustrate him and stop him from. Come on, what was there? Where was the violation? That was a public hearing where people were expressing themselves. But I want to say that Dakota is not the only person who was frustrated. So many people were. Some people had their mic.
Unfortunately, we have lost him there. Well, Chiwe, a final word from you before we wrap up?
Yeah, but I was just getting a bit more curious then now that I mean Simba does paint a picture that starts to make you wonder about the next generation. With Zimbabwe having a big young population, I'm wondering what this does to that generation and how the future actually looks if they're caught up in this cycle. But maybe he doesn't have answers for that, Baillor.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, time is running against us. I wanted to get a comment from you as well. We've seen a couple of days ago in Cameroon, the president kind of like appointed his son as the vice president. And there are also reports or allegations of people saying that that is a way of him wanting to step down so that the son can take over. I think the recent trend in terms of the way we are seeing African politics is circulating across the continent. It's a pity. I just wondered if you could comment on that, if you had seen it. What's your take on it?
My take is that thanks for raising that one. In fact, I'm trying to get anyone who is interested in talking more about the Cameroon situation to come and have a chat with us about it, and with a preference for somebody from Cameroon. So that's President Paul Biya appointing his son in the military arm as well as his vice presidency. I mean, usually what we see politically, whether it's on the African continent or elsewhere in the world, usually the vice president is set up to become a successor. So these are very monarchy tendencies where we are holding constitutions, adjusting them to suit our personal gains or our personal businesses. So I think that for me, my current interpretation or my current reflection on what's happened with President Paul Biya's son, him being appointed as vice president as well as head of the military, is speaking to a succession plan. That's all I see.
Thank you very much. Simba, you are back. We lost you there for a second. A final word from you. We've got less than 30 seconds to go.
My apologies, folks. My volume has literally gone. I apologize.
That's
Maybe
no
we
problem.
could do closing remarks because somehow my device is, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
You've just been asked for closing remarks, actually. He's just asked you for closing remarks.
Are you with us, Simba? Well, it seems like we've lost him again. Well, Simba, thank you very much for taking your time to speak to us on African Voices Radio today. And Tchiyiwe as well, thank you very much. You came in at a very short notice, but your contribution has been very immense on this week's Inside the Continent on African Voices Radio. We want to extend our sincere gratitude to Simba Chikanza for shedding light on the complex and evolving situation in Zimbabwe. The proposed constitutional changes have far-reaching implications not only for Zimbabwe, but for the entire region. It's a story that we will continue to unfold, and we will be following it closely. To our viewers or listeners, thank you for tuning in, and remember to stay informed and engaged. Until next week, I'm Baillor Jalloh. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.